And we are live now. All right. Now, I would like to welcome you to our workshop today with my friend Claudia Aronowitz. And I'm Sarah Rosensweet. I am your Peaceful Parenting Coach and the admin of the Peaceful Parenting Facebook group. And I'm so thrilled to have Claudia with us today. And I have to say that I was a little selfish in inviting her to come in and talk to us today about relationships because, like many of you, I have been feeling the effects of this pandemic and being around not only my kids 24/7, but my husband 24/7, whom I love dearly, but we're just really not used to spending this much time together. So Claudia is a coach, and one of the areas in which she coaches is relationships. So I'm so excited that she's here today to help us with some tips that we can do. And I had a lot of people say, well, I can watch this, but my partner won't. And I think everything we're going to be talking about, Claudia, is stuff that we can do on our own, right? Like we don't need our partners to be participating in this workshop. These are all things that we can do, things we can bring to the relationship. So Claudia, if you could just introduce yourself and then we'll just dive right in.
So thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I think this is a great opportunity. So my name is Claudia Aronowitz, and I'm a relationship coach. I like to say I'm a communication or conflict coach. I'm also a mediator, and I'm completely fascinated by human relationships and communication. I just find it breathtaking. I find it complicated, and I find it fantastic. But I know the difficulties that it has. And one of the things that I do is what I call just one-on-one coaching, which is what we're going to do right now, which are things that you can do by yourself that can have an impact in the relationship itself. So of course, there's things we can do together if the both partners were here. But this is all about what can I do to communicate differently, to be triggered differently in this time of crisis. In general, they're the same tips I give all around, but this is hard. Come on, being 24/7 with your husband at home or your partner at home or somebody at home is not going to be easy.
No.
I guess the first thing is just we can all laugh together a little bit and say, oh my God, this is really crazy. I like to say, if in your mind you haven't had a little bit of a get out of my house, go travel, a divorce for 5 minutes, just something, just please. Then it wouldn't be normal. It's not easy to be with your partner 24/7.
Can I share a little funny story? When I realized I really need to have you on, was my husband was about to eat some leftovers out of the fridge that I was fairly certain were off. And the thought crossed my mind to let him eat the bad food. and it was just like that, those little tiny thoughts that you can't help. And of course I didn't, but I was like, oh no, we gotta get some help from Claudia. And I love him dearly. And, generally things are fine, but it does put a strain on things, right? When you don't have your own space. Is that what you're saying with your people?
Absolutely. And even me, that I would consider myself a really expert in communication. Like my husband the other day got really mad about nothing, why we sat at the table before he sat down, and it completely exploded. Under normal circumstances, I would have known exactly how to go upstairs and tell him and just cool it off and keep on going. And I was just like, no, let's see how long he can stay mad. 24 hours, let's just see how it is. Because even ourselves, that I really know how to manage those situations. It's like, I'm not to here. I don't feel like doing that.
Yeah.
Take care of myself. You also want me to take care of you and the relationship and everything. But there are things that we can do.
Okay, so give us a couple things. And by the way, if anyone has a question, pop it in the comments, and I think we'll have a chance to answer some questions too.
Oh yeah.
And if you're watching this later in my group, Claudia's in the group, and so you can ask a question later and tag her, and she can pop in and answer. So if you're on the call now, pop a question in when it comes to you, and you can ask one later also. So go for it. Give us like a couple of actionable things that we can do.
So the first one is just to normalize it. To normalize it is that even in the best of relationships, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be disagreement. I actually see a red flag when I see a couple that says, oh, we never fight. I'm like, really? Fighting doesn't mean disrespect or, really being loud. But we disagree all the time. It's part of our relationship, and now even more. So the idea is, so what do I do with all these disagreements? And what do I do when I don't know how to take care of it? So here is the first tips. Try to remember the positive in your relationship. I have this little post-it, and I saw again a video today with it's just white with a little dot in the middle. Just to remind me that yes, there's a lot of negativity. And these are the hard moments, and it can be bigger in this times of year, but there's also something else. There's also positivity. There's a reason you're there with your partner. There are things that you do like about them. And this is the time to just remind yourself, well, you know, my husband is really there for me when I need him. And he's for me, and he's trusting. Yes, he's also pretty a pain in the ass sometimes. Sorry, I hope he's not watching this. He's cynical and he's these things, but there's also the positive. And if we can just take a step back and say, yes, I dislike that, but there's also something good going here. That's number one. The second one, which is in our control, is the clarity of our message. You have no idea how many times we say something and our partner doesn't get it because we think they should know. I like to give this very dumb example, which is, you know, I'm cooking dinner and I can tell my husband, take the garbage out. And then I keep on doing whatever I'm doing. And we sit down for dinner and he never took the garbage out. Now, did I tell him, take the garbage out before dinner because if not, the kitchen stinks and I can't enjoy dinner? I didn't. But when I told him, like, I was going to take it out, absolutely. Half of the message never came across. He was going to take it out and I'm already pissed off, sorry for the words, because I didn't tell him clearly what I need.
Right.
Especially now that we're so edgy, that we're so in ourselves, that there's so much things that we don't control. If you need something, it has to be so clear that you even ask them. So what did you understand that I'm asking for? Oh, this and this and this. Okay. Because we don't understand what the other person needs.
Right.
And if you need it, if you need a timeout, if you need time for yourself, by all means, ask for it. If not, where is it going to come from? Yeah. Okay. So that's example number one.
Yeah. So we've got normalizing the fact that there are going to be disagreements and challenges right now, and we've got the be specific. Oh, look for the positive, which really strikes me. Like we do that so much in peaceful parenting too. We always we talk about growing the positive, delighting in your child, like really just trying to like change our mindset, and what you focus on grows. One of my kids, he's always saying, this person does that and that person does that. And I said, well, you're always going to find negative things about people, like, because we're human, right? We're always, if we're going to focus on that, then that's what we're going to see all the time. And I think as humans, we're also, what I've read is from an evolutionary perspective, we're way more likely to notice the negative things. And we really have to work at noticing the positive things. So do you have any and I know we're sort of just reviewing here, but do you have any actual activities that you suggest to do?
Yeah, under normal circumstances, I would, but part of what we need to understand is they call it a negative bias. Is by the evolution of our mind, we will remember the bad from the good. So what I'm asking you to do is force yourself to remember the good as well, and not only the negative. So yes, my husband got mad that evening, but he hasn't gotten mad the 30 evenings before. So why am I focusing on that specific evening? The other thing they talk a lot about is that positivity ratio, which is there's bad things in my relationship, but there's also good ones. And sometimes it's about dealing with the negative things in my relationship and going to counseling or doing things. But other times it's just by having more positive interactions with each other. So I'm going to use my personal example, but I know if I can be kind to my husband and give him a hug in the morning or a kiss, it already sets a tone of voice of how we want to relate to each other. Completely in my control. Can I do it every morning? Not always in these times, but most of them I can, because I know that if I add that small positivity in my relationship, he will already take the cue and know that's what we want. So I don't know what for you is, but it can be a cup of coffee together. It can be going for the walk together. It can be doing whatever small minimal interaction, but that you can get your partner to smile. It already gives us more positivity than negativity, and that's really going to help us. That's what we're talking about. So for me, it really is that kiss in the morning. I know if I give him that kiss in the morning and smile and said, I wish you a happy day, I already set the tone for our relationship that day.
So I saw some research that said that men who kiss their wives goodbye in the morning are less likely to have heart attacks than men who don't.
I haven't read that one, but there's a lot more happiness in our relationships if we can have more positive moments. Without, we still have to be with them 24/7 right now, which is hard. We still have a lot of things we don't control, but small things of positivity can really shift how we feel.
Right. So try and grow the positive and focus on the good things that you like. And I know we were already talking about communication, but before we move back to communication, what do you find sometimes gets people stuck in not wanting to look for the positive, or, resisting that? I mean, because, what I find sometimes is like, well, why should I have to do that? Or, maybe I don't know. I wonder if it's like hurt feelings, like about taking things personally.
So there's two things that I find. One is the feeling that of having to be right. It's like, well, I'm pissed off and he did that, and now you want me to kiss him in the morning? No way, I'm not going to be right. But here is the thing. If you can have a better impact in your relationship, you're going to feel better yourself. So I'm not saying always, be the one that takes the blame or do things, but do things that still feel good to you. And you don't always have to be right. A relationship is not about you and I and both being right. It's what we can create as our relationship. And sometimes that means just letting go of being right. Who cares who's right? We need to be in the same house 24/7 for who knows how many more weeks. How are we going to do that?
Yeah.
The other one is about triggers. We need to be aware what's triggering us, because sometimes it has nothing to do with our partner. It has to do with us and how we're feeling. Sometimes he can be just as cynical and I don't get triggered at all. And sometimes I'm more emotional and he says the same kind of wording and I get triggered. So if you feel yourself getting agitated and getting triggered, it's time to take a time out. It's time to move away, because in that part of our brain, it's like with kids, that's not a good place to be, because we can't be rational. And we need to understand that if I can recognize that I'm getting triggered and behave differently, then he gets triggered differently and will behave differently. And that's a little bit how I get out of this cycle of feeling stuck and feeling so against each other.
What I learned, like my relationship has been like with my husband has been like the biggest, the improvement of it has been the biggest bonus in all of the parenting coaching work that I've been doing the last 5 or 6 years. And one thing that I learned was you can never solve anything when one or both parties is triggered. And that's, I learned that with parents working with children. But with my husband, like, we've made this renewed commitment to just like, okay, we're going to have to talk about this later when we're not so upset, right? Like, so if you're actually finding that you're in a fight. But what I found, which was amazing, is a lot of times you don't even need to talk about it later, because the only reason there was conflict was because somebody was hijacked, right? Like, when you're not hijacked anymore, it's not even like, oh gosh, why was I so upset about that? Oh, because my fight, flight, or freeze brain had taken over there. So just to your point on triggering, I think that sometimes it's just the being triggered itself, which is the conflict, not even the thing.
In mediation, we call it the merry-go-round of conflict, which is, if I'm triggered, I behave in a way that triggers my partner or the person that I'm having the conflict with, which again makes him behave in a way. And if we just change one thing can be the behavior, or one thing is, oh, I'm recognizing I get triggered by that. I'll try not to get triggered from it because it makes me behave in a way that I actually don't like. When we start screaming at each other, I don't think anybody likes to be there.
Yeah.
So what got me triggered there, then maybe I can breathe more and not start behaving the way I'm behaving right now.
100%. I love that. And that just goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, is that these are changes you can make on your own, totally. Right? Like, just one person changing in the relationship can completely change the tone and the patterns that you're in of your relationship.
And I've seen it with myself, and I do a lot of just like 3 sessions one-on-one coaching in relationships with one person, and I see the difference it does. Because we start being more aware of like, oh, and when I behave that way, it actually triggers him. So I could probably behave differently that would trigger him differently. And they're usually just minor changes on the way we say it, or in the way we interact, or the things that I decide to pay less attention to because they're not worth it.
Right.
Just pay attention to the ones that are more worth it and more important to me.
Right. And what you said before about, that letting go of having to be right. I saw something on Facebook, I think, that said, you can be right or you can be happy.
And I know one that says, you can be smart or you can be right. And sometimes it's actually about being smart. What's better for me? What's better for my relationship? Do I really need to be right this time?
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, so back to communication, being clear.
So back to communication, it's being clear. And here is the thing. in order to be clear in communication, I need two things. One, to know what I actually need. And I'm going to ask everybody that's hearing this, what do you actually need to feel a little bit better right now during this time? So you can change this. But what is it that you actually want to ask your partner for? First, you need to talk to yourself and be clear with what you need. And then you need to say it in a way that is so clear that you even ask at the end, so what did I tell you? Because many times you will be surprised, but when you tell them, so what did I tell you? They'll answer something different. You're like, that's not what I told you. Great, tell it again in a different way. It's not that they don't want to hear it, it's just that they're not in our minds and it might not be as clear as we want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think sometimes I love that. Do you follow Brene Brown?
Oh yes.
You know her story that she tells in I think it's one of her books, but also in her Netflix special about
the story she's telling herself.
Yeah, the story we're telling ourselves. So I just love that so much. Like, you know, that's like that's the reverse, the communication that you might not be hearing what your partner means to be telling you also, right? Like they say one thing and you're like, oh, they must be thinking I'm so stupid or blah, blah, blah. And so that the story I'm telling myself is not necessarily what the story the other person is meaning to say or what they are saying.
And this takes me, you know, we talk a lot about the ladder of assumptions and how much we assume, you know, so that he did that, and that's exactly her example. So that means he really doesn't like me, and he means he's mad because of this about me. And the reality is, it's just a story we're telling ourselves. And if that's really what they want, we need to tell them, look, from this that happened this morning, the story I'm telling myself is that you don't love me anymore, or you don't care about me, or is it true? 99% of the times, it's actually just a story we're telling ourselves. And it's so important to change those stories because we're making it up. Because we're not making it up because that's the way it really feels for us. And that's the way we feel it, and that became our truth. But it's not what the other party intended. It's not what our party wanted us to feel.
It's often like the story that we're bringing with us from our childhood is what I find personally.
Yes, and it doesn't even have to be that. It's just because I'm feeling insecure. Like, I'll give you one example. I once had with some colleagues, I was having an argument and they sent me an email. And I was about to answer with this really harsh tone because I thought it was so aggressive. And I stopped myself and I went up to my husband because we actually work at home. And I said, isn't she so aggressive? And he read the email and he says, I don't see that. She's just plain cool telling you that. And I said, okay, for 48 hours, I'm not answering that email. Because I had told another story and I was feeling something else and I couldn't be objective just to answer to what they were meaning. And this happens in the personal relationships and with our work relationships. It's exactly the same.
Do you have any like phrasing or anything that you suggest for using with our partners?
I actually do like Brene Brown says about, you know, the story I'm telling myself, or I don't know if this is the intention you had, but the impact you're having on me is this. Just wanting you to know, because I don't think that's the intention. And the example is use I statements. I like to call them I statements, which start how you feel, how it impacted you, because then the other person doesn't have to defend themselves. And if I don't have to defend myself, which is our natural mechanism when we feel attacked, is we're going to protect ourselves and defend ourselves, then I can hear you. So if I start saying, you know, the way I perceived it this morning and the way it made me feel was this and this and this. So it really is not about you, it's about me. And then a conversation can really happen. So I call them I statements. Anytime you can start with, I felt this way, it made me feel this way, I need this. You already have a bigger chance from your party to be able to hear you. Or for us to be able to hear our partners. It goes both ways.
Yeah, that's right. That's really good. Okay. Do you have any other tips for us? If anyone has any questions, I know they're like, we've got 20 people on here live, which is amazing. So if you guys have any questions, someone asked, is this going to be recorded? Yes, we are recording it right now. So you can watch it later. She said her kids are being too noisy and she can't hear. So anyone else have any questions, pop them in for Claudia, and we'll see if Claudia, go for it. If you have any other.
I have two more that I really want to highlight. And here is the thing. I want you not to assume. I think assumptions are the worst enemy of good communications. If you think your partner wants that, ask them. You have no idea how many times in the work I do, somebody will say, well, they should know. We've been married for 26 years, or we've been married for 10 years. They should know what I need. No, they don't. They're a different person. It's a different circumstances. If it's important to you, you have to say it. You have to ask for it. If you understood something from them, don't assume that what you understood is what they wanted. Say it. So what you're asking for me is for me to cook every day now from now on, and you're not going to help me. Or what? That's what I argue about with my husband. Right? Cooking 3 times a day today, these days. So you have not to assume. People is not that we want to have bad intentions. It's just that our minds, if I had even 2 hours with you, I could show you how when you say something, until the time I know about it, I added so many things that it's a different reality. It's a different conversation that we're having. So whatever is important to you, don't assume.
Right.
And it takes me to the last one, which is,
can I stop you before you move on to the last one?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people feel like if they have to ask for what they need, then it doesn't mean as much.
Oh, no way.
I know that's not true, but I think that's what stops people sometimes. Like I don't know, there's like this Hallmark romance idea that everybody should be like, our true loves should be able to know what we need and fill those needs in us. And I don't know, I just wonder why. I guess some people find it really hard to ask for what they need.
I think our true love should be able to want the best for us and want to give us what we ask for, but it's impossible to know for what I need. And I'm going to give you an example that happened with me and my partner. Okay, I love birthdays. My mother would make birthdays the most important thing in the world. I absolutely like being the queen of the day. My husband comes from a family that hates birthdays, could care less, doesn't care about all. For the first 10 years of our marriage, we would fight because I would never get what I want. And I would try to make something for him and he could care less. So I finally got to the idea that I buy my birthday presents, I tell him what I want, and I always get what I want because he comes with me, he takes me, he gives it, he puts a smile on, but I can't make him love birthdays because he doesn't. So here is the thing. If you love your partner, ask for it. How else are they supposed to know it that you really need that time away from the kids right now? Or that you're really having a hard time because of something else? Or, especially now, it's like a roller coaster of emotions. You're great in one morning and then the next one you're not. In the middle of the day, you've handled this quarantine perfectly. And they're supposed to know if you're in the good moment or the bad moment or in the between moment.
Maybe we should have like a sign on our chest that says like good mood or bad mood or something. We can like flip it over so people will know.
Or, sometimes all we need sometimes as women is a hug, and they need to be left alone, or how are they supposed to know? I really want to tell you that if you love your partner and you want to be with them, ask for what you need. That's a real present, and ask clearly about it. And then you can even be even nicer and says, what do you need from me? How can I be of support right now? These are hard times. We're triggered more easily. We're on edge more easily. We're 24/7 with them when that's not what women are supposed to be doing. So we need to dance and let them know, well, what's going to be our next step and where are we in that moment.
Okay, that's great. So don't assume that you know what they need or that they know what you need, and ask for it. Ask them what they need and ask for what you need.
100%. And be very clear about it. And the last one is, I want you to remember that we have different perspectives. When I'm working with you, I would have put in a little piece of paper a 6. For you, it's a 9. For me, it's a 6. And we can argue forever and disagree because you see a 9 and I see a 6. It doesn't matter how much we argue because really it feels like a 6. It really feels like a 9 for you. And it takes time to move around and say, oh, it could be a 6, or all right, it could be a 9. Oh, there's different ways of seeing things. There's always a different way of seeing it. And it depends where you stand and how you're feeling and where you are. That's how you see whatever event is happening now. So remember, there's always another way to tell the story and another way to perceive whatever disagreement or argument or whatever's happening in our household. There's always more than one perspective. And we need to be able to shift it and say, okay, I really got mad, but what happened to my partner here? Is there something else that I missed that might have been seen differently?
Those are great tips. And, I think that at least I know from my work with coaching, like, even though I'm coaching parents about their things with their kids, relationship stuff often comes up, right? Because we can't separate all this stuff out. And one thing that I find that parents say is like, well, you know, why should I be the one who's trying so hard in this relationship when, you know, I'll just be generalist, like he's not doing anything, and like why shouldn't, like we've been talking a lot about things one person can do. And I mean, I guess my answer to that would be, well, because we want to make our relationships better for ourselves, like, you know, like so that we're happy and that we feel good. Is there something else that you think about that? Do you get people asking you that, or
They ask me all the questions, all the time, that type of questions. And I like to say is, look, I'm me and you're you. And we're not talking about changing you or changing him. We're talking about changing or creating a relationship that works for us.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do things only for him. Do things that also are for your relationship and how you feel. Because if you're happier in the relationship and that relationship feels better and it really has like a life of its own, then you're going to feel much better. And the only way to do that is by giving to the relationship and also asking back for what you need from it. So I like to say, well, don't only give and give and give, ask for what you need back. Are you clear on what you're asking? If I would have your partner in front of me and I would ask them, would they know what you need? Be amazed how many times they don't. They don't really know what we're needing. So be generous, especially during this time. Give as much as you can. Let go of what's not important. But also, and I think this is one of the most important ones, take care of yourselves. Because giving time for ourselves, you know, you said it once, you know, maybe I need to go to the bathroom and close the door for half an hour if that's the only quiet place I can. But whatever you need to do, you can't be there for everybody all the time. You can't continue being the great worker and the great parent and the great partner if you don't stop and take a time out and say, now it's my time.
Yeah.
It's time to cry. It's my time for my cup of wine. It's my time for my walk. I need a breath of fresh air, or I don't have the capacity to give and to ask for what I need.
So many parents, so many moms that I work with have such a hard time putting themselves on that to-do list and putting themselves, you know, I guess it's really like culturally seen as like selfish or something, like, you know, to take for yourself. But if we don't, we can't take care of our people.
And here I'm going to give you a personal story. So I have a grandmother that I adored with and when she was dying and she knew she was dying, she came up to me and said, I have to give you a very important life advice. And her advice was, every day for 10 minutes, you have to do something because it puts a smile on your face. I don't care what it is, if it's watching a tree, taking a long shower, whatever you want to call it. But we all need for 10 minutes a day to do something just because it puts a smile in our face. It took me a long time to understand her advice, but I think she was so
That's so good. Well, that's a great assignment for people who've watched this, is to take the 10 minutes a day to do something to put a smile on your face. It can be homework.
I would say that's homework. And the other homework is, don't assume, ask and be really clear for what you need. You can't get it unless you ask. And it can be small things. But if we ask for it, then we can be clearer.
We have, you know, Lauren asked a question, and the way that this shows up, it's really hard for me to see. Hold on one second. I'll see if the questions scroll down, but I missed her question. So just give me 1 second and I'll see if I can find it. It's going to make
I could talk to you about relationships endlessly. Okay. There's so many more tips we could talk about. So I really invite.
I'm looking for this.
So I would really invite anybody that wants more insights into relationships to go to my blog, and we can put there the link to my website.
Yes.
Get the free resources. I write about relationships all the time and about personal communications and about how to deal with conflict. There is so much in our control to help us feel better in the relationships. And relationships keep us up at night. If we feel better with the connections we have, we just feel better with ourselves. That's how important they are. And if you have a question, yes.
Yes, I've got actually, there are a bunch of questions, so I'm glad I expanded this out. Okay, so Sarah says, how to cope when one spouse is an essential worker and life hasn't changed, but my life has been turned upside down, working from home crisis, schooling, all the things that she has to do. And she said she's communicated this to him and he's trying hard to be understanding, but it's still just really hard. So it sounds like his life hasn't really changed, but hers has.
So I would say two things. One is you need to be really kind to each other. because you're both going through a part that is very hard. So if he's an essential worker and he's having to go outside, he's also having a tough time, and you're also having a tough time. And I think here, for this example, clarity is the most important thing. Is just ask for what you need. So if he's coming back home and you spend the whole day with the kids and you're going crazy because you're not used to that, you have to decide it again. I know you really had a hard time. Is it a good time if I ask for half an hour free because I'm going crazy with the kids right now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me out with this? More than ever, it's a thing about communicating our perspective and communicating our point of view. It's not so easy for somebody to understand what it's like to be staying at home when they have never done it. It's like you're talking Chinese to them maybe. And you have to be even more explicit so that they can get it because they're not there.
Okay, so it just sounds like just more communication she could use.
More communication and more clarity about this is how it felt, and how we're, and more trying to be understanding that it's tough for both of them.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so Lauren asks, I know the rules for setting boundaries as far as being progressive and something enforceable and something hold on, that is not making sense to me. Lauren, I don't totally understand your question. It says, she says, so boundaries should be progressive and enforceable, she said, and something that, I think that maybe some autocorrect or something happened. So just why don't you, maybe Claudia, you could just speak generally to boundaries and
so what I think boundaries are a little bit like parenthood and relationships, which is you do get a say about boundaries. You can say, I don't care how mad you are or how triggered you are, you're not going to yell at me. That to me is a boundary with my kids. My kids know that if they start yelling, I stop them. I don't care what they have to say. They will never talk to me that way. That was my own personal boundary. It may not be yours. Boundaries are very personal. But whatever the boundaries are for you, they need to be known in the relationship. Because if your partner doesn't know what those boundaries are, how are they supposed to know to enforce them? And you have to be very clear. If whatever you decided the boundary is, then be very clear. Because if one day it's a boundary, but the other it isn't, and one day it is, and the other it isn't, how are we supposed to know that that's important to you? So whatever that boundary is, enforce it. For some people, we never go to sleep mad. For others, it's not that. Each partnership has a different type of boundary.
Okay, great. She said, she corrected what she was specifically asking was, she can't set a boundary of something that her spouse has to do because you can't make a person do anything. So does that add anything to what you just said, Claudia?
Yes, and here is the thing. You can't make the other side do anything they don't want to do. That's absolutely true, because we only have control in ourselves. Does she know why he doesn't want to do it? What is stopping him from doing it? Does your partner know how important that is for you? And some of the things that we want them to do, but they're not willing to do, we have to let go. And others, we just really need to ask for them and understand how hard they are. But she's right. We do not control the other side. We control more ourselves. The question is, how far you're willing to go and where you're not willing to do. But I would ask,
and also maybe ask why.
Why aren't you not willing to do it?
Yeah, why the resistance?
Yes.
And maybe it's also like maybe there's some assumptions going on that he doesn't really understand what she's asking, and so he's saying no to something different.
Absolutely. I would really put my curious hat on. That's how I would like to say it, and really try to understand what's the resilience there. What is really happening there that if for me it's essential and he still says no, or she still says no, what's happening there?
Yeah, yeah.
Get curious, try to understand, because maybe the ask has to come in a different way.
Very good. Okay, well, so thank you so much. We got a lot of thumbs up and loving the content and loving all the tips that you gave. So I really appreciate you coming in. And you already said where people can find you. We can also put some links in my group. And thank you. I really appreciate it.
I really will put the link to my website, and I have a lot of blogs that I write about relationships, and I am offering half an hour of free one-on-one advice. If you're really having a conflict during these hard times, I think it's my obligation, and I really want to help others. Just get in contact with me, and I'll be happy to get on a call and see how we can apply that specifically for you.
Thank you so much. And is there a way to get in touch with you on your website also?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, take care, everybody. It was a pleasure. Bye.
Thanks.